And welcome as we go live here on all the podcast stations, Apple, iHeart, and wherever you get your podcast channel at. Welcome to You Be the Judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. We also go out live to the YouTube channels and all the other social medias, so you can always pick up the video or you can watch it live. So, You Be the Judge, every Wednesday, 6 p.m. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer, my beautiful co-host, Judge Claudia Barber, and Marylin Pierre, soon-to-be Circuit Court Judge of Montgomery County. Here we like to do three important things: information, understanding, and action. And we have always, we love to have our beautiful guests come on and talk about and introduce, and so we can also be informed, engaged, and be active. Today we have another great guest, and Benoit, did I pronounce that right?
Benoit.
See?
Benoit from Beloit. But
Benoit Brokens. And I missed my French class. I took Italian in school, so I did not get the Benoit. So welcome, Benoit. Please introduce yourself to You Be the Judge, and then we'll get right into the show.
Yes, I'm a former Foreign Service officer. I was an economic commercial officer, and mostly I did domestic assignments on whatever, environment and trade policy, and then I was a trade negotiator for Japan issues, and served in Europe for running commercial operations. And I published 4 articles. One was the changing structure of international law for the new international order, and it required that we negotiate an economic agreement at the United Nations. And so if you read the article, it sort of outlines it's an unclassified version of what I did. I wrote several market studies, the market study for industry in Europe, medical equipment, laboratory equipment, so forth, child labor report for Mozambique, and a couple articles on NAFTA, labor exchanges and so forth. But these are all unclassified versions of the kind of things that I did. So that's what I'm originally from Milwaukee, although you find I'm really from Arkansas.
You mean Arkansas or Arkansas? Which one?
I'm from Arkansas, but I'm a product of the socialist Milwaukee. And so I grew up in the Wisconsin system, went to the State University, went to grad school at Columbia Law School, Columbia Business School, Columbia School of International Affairs, and I got a Master's of International Law at George Washington. And from there I joined, and then I was in the State Department. So that's about me in a nutshell.
I also am a G-Dub grad, so go. Way to go. So, Marylin, go ahead. You have a question.
Well, I love how Mr. Bookins said that those are the only 4 articles that he could talk about, because we know that living down here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, when somebody says that they work for the State Department, you really have got to be really careful about the next question you ask. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about what it is that you were able to tell us about. And you have lived in many different places. You've worn many hats. Like you said before, you're a lawyer. Would it be too much to classify you as a diplomat, or were you in the diplomatic corps?
Well, yes, I was in the Foreign Service for about 10 years, and mostly my assignments were in Washington. And so, I worked on the National Security Council. I worked on the National Trade Policy Council. It's probably a reverse system for most diplomats. They usually do 4 overseas assignments, and they do Washington. I just did it reverse. And it probably helped me be an insider to see what kind of things you get done. You got to work with people to get policies done for, let's say, on the National Security Council or for the Trade Policy Council. I'd say out of about 10,000 cases, all my positions were accepted and were run up the flagpole. So, and my big threat is the president doesn't want to have to come down here to talk about this. And the other agency says, yeah, you're right. We've got the best position that's going to affect, commerce or mostly workers and so forth. So, that's the activity. So that's probably where I fit in.
I have to tell you, I have the fortune enough to be in a Security Council meeting several times at the UN because of the ambassadorship I've done with the peacekeeping missions all over the world. So my question I have for you is to give us some insight on a couple things. When we talk about world politics in different countries, there is a lot of things that the United States people gets missed. I have known that by being one on the ground when policy is implemented by the UN and the International Criminal Court, and then when you guys are working on that Security Council, what are some of those insights that American people needs to be informed, or would you like to inform the American people, like these are the things that go on that affects us here in the United States and here in your state and here in your country?
Well, I do have to say, I think my perspective is probably, hey, I work in a foreign policy environment. Everybody's like you. We're all professionals. We come from different walks of life and so forth. And so the main thing that we're talking about is what is our national interest? What are we trying to accomplish? And we work in different areas. I only work in the economic and commercial, but I've worked in, I'm on the National Security Council staff, and I do National Security Council issues. I have to work with people from defense and the military and so forth. I'm probably more comfortable with Commerce Department and Trade Department and Treasury Department. We work on economic issues as to what's best in interest, how it's going to have these kind of impact. But I think that's the overriding concern. Then you got other people who are security who are, I think they talk about the Iraq issue, and I said, how does the factual issue get past professionals? I'm going to say, all everybody on the call, you're a professional, and they bring the information, they give you such and such and such, and you all agree or disagree as to what the information is. You got the same information, you got the same data, and it goes up, and you send it to your assistant secretary for comms, labor, and it's not factual information. And that's the big question. How does it get past the committee? It usually is a committee of 7 or 8. You got one professional in intelligence or economics, and then it goes to a larger committee of 26.
Right.
So if you can't convince the 7 or 8 and whatever it is, then it's sort of that. But the bottom line is, what is the objective? What are we trying to do? And I think my view is it's always good to have somebody of conscience in the room.
Isn't that the dilemma? I mean, you all can't check each other's consciousness in the room, but it seems like it needs to be checked because things do get missed often.
Well, I think my university wanted to know, hey, no, but there are people in the room, they got the information. The United States government, and they get information from the trade sector. They get people, for example, like they put you on the advisory committee, and you say, this is what we think is best and so forth. And then you've got the staff people who may or may not agree. Some, probably, you said, how are minorities affected? How is Africa, Asia, Latin America affected by what we're trying to do? Is it discriminatory? We were discriminatory at one point. So, you get into that kind of discussion. You got an ambassador at a U.S. Black ambassador at the United Nations. Before that, you had somebody else. And I think the policy is, but you got all these people in the room trying to make decisions. Then you have to consult with the private sector. Like, you be the judge, What would you say? They ask you, what is your view on Haiti policy? I'm just picking that one. Well, somebody in Washington said, hey, this is not a good policy. We need to do some other kind of thing.
Since you stepped in it, Marylin, you have a question? Because he stepped in something, and I'm going to open it up. You mentioned Haiti. Since you mentioned Haiti, you stepped in it. Economically, from a economic standpoint, by looking through your economic lens, I know you cannot speak for the current department, the current administration, but economically, why do you think their policy is being pushed the way it is now?
Well, look, I'm a backup. I say I do. There is one area that I do. I put out a little call for. I'm a member of the AME Church, and so about a month or so ago, I put out a call. I said, "Hey, our people, we need to get all of our people with logistics and so forth,
right.
And we need to get them resources and money on the ground."
Right.
My local church filled up a full airplane. My local church, just one church, we filled up a full airplane. We've got our stuff to get it down to Katrina. We can do the same thing for Haiti. Mm-hmm. So I identified people. I said, "Hey, here are 6 or 7 people, military logistics, civil logistics. Hey, you can put things together. Mm-hmm. If we need to get water, food, clothing, Pampers, you guys got the expertise to do it." And I said, "Now turn in your name to the bishop." Guys, you shouldn't have put my name on the list. Well, I said, "Well, if I put Colonel this and Colonel that and brother, and I admitted you, then you would have been upset." And, and he said, "Oh, okay, all right, you need to get, but they need to get out there. We need to get money down there and need to get some sort of thing to get them on the ground." And so, I look at that. I looked up and I saw the iron market. That might tell you something. I said, "Oh man, the iron market is, and I almost bust out in tears." I'm not from there, but I've been to the iron market. Yeah. You talk to the people. Yeah. As a commercial officer, I stopped by the Haitian embassy and I talked to the commercial officer. Yeah. "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm here checking out." I said, I might want this assignment. He said, "I can't get any work with everybody coming out here checking out the assignment." Okay. So, but I think we looked at something. What is the U.S. policy towards Haiti? I'm gonna be, that's not my area, but it is part of the Caribbean. The AME Church has our 16th district. We were in our general conference in July when the president was assassinated. And so you've got our delegates from 39 countries. We're in the room. They're traumatized. They really can't focus on what we church business. They've got to work about some other kind of things. So it is something that we have to look at. And we got people. They're not delegates, and they're members, yeah. And they have a voice in terms of what the church needs to be doing, how we're going to do outreach, how we do different kind of things. They've got representation of lay people and clergy and so forth. And so it's a big area. And what is it? Is Haiti being penalized because it's the first independent country, and secondly, because Haiti had to pay reparations for liberating the slaves? So
just saying, right? Just saying, and you just might hit it on the head. And I know Marylin Pierre, soon to be circuit court judge. I always got to throw that in there because people are going to forget, and people are listening. You got to be reminded that Maryland's going to be the next circuit court judge in Montgomery County here in Maryland. We just saying, but but I think the policy, even according to several books read, they did not like the idea of the first being anointed one of the regions to free themselves without anyone's help. And they don't want that type of mess on this continent. And I think that policy still holds today.
Well, I listen, I'm not, it's sort of very, very silo. I said, when you're in that role, hey, I'm either on the committee that's for that, or I'm not on the committee and so forth. And you got different kind of perspective, and you really have to come in with the information that you have. And and that's why it's important to have people in the room to raise different policies. I'm going to just sort of let this slip. Somebody, it's in my bio in our State Department, and they would say, "Hey, man, do you think the chairman of the Black Caucus should be doing this, or the AME bishop should be doing this?" And I'd say, well, first of all, they're relatives, and you know that. And secondly, I agree with them. And number 3, I'm too low down in the family structure to say anything, period.
Yeah, and Mr. Bookins, we could talk about a gazillion other things. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is the overview of your family property survey in Mississippi that was recently done.
Well, that is real great. In fact, that's my little thing. I said this is my first time going to Mississippi, and I'm running through Mississippi. I'm flanked by. I've always noticed that I'm in the South, except for one time. I'm always flanked by somebody who's from the area. So I'm flanked by 2 of my cousins, Army colonels, and I'm running around Mississippi with them. I sort of feel like I'm a little chair, and we're looking at property that belongs to the Brookins family and different factors, different parts of us, and we're looking at what has happened to it, what's developing, and it's sort of a nice little area. But we're looking at the property, and the other side of it is we got property in Arkansas where I was born. We've had it in our family since about 1800, but you sort of look at but I think thanks to Alec Haley, he has required us to look at our roots. Where are we from? And he's also made us look at our property roots and so forth. And these family reunions enable us to go and look at, for me, Mississippi for the first time. I've got to go and look at where my family actually lived, although my family's actually was slaves in Virginia, and they moved to Virginia, to Alabama, and then, in fact, her name was actually Mary Ann Hockett Harris, was from Virginia, and she married a Shedrick Brookins from Alabama. And so they're the ones who started our family. We're now down to the 6th generation. And so somebody had to track them, and we had to go out to touch the tombstones of everybody in Mississippi and the church where Bishop Brookins got his start. And I got to walk down Brookins Road and all these other kind of things. Just sort of a look at that. But we're surveying the property, looking at the pond, all these other kind of things to sort of do. That was the committee. And the Mississippi bishop came by. He stopped by and say hello because they were having an annual conference. This was about 100 churches from Mississippi. But it was an opportunity for us to look at the property. We also had a chance to visit a couple of my cousins, my brother and cousins came into the day early. They went to the Mississippi Civil Rights and the Mississippi Indigenous People History Museum. And so I said, I'm here. Can I go back again? I want to look at all the names are there any Brookins on the lynching list? And they said, no, we can't go back. It's too emotional. It's too much stress. So I had to go by myself. And I actually looked at all the names who were on the little list.
That was in Jackson.
That was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, I was just there in Jackson and Meridian.
You look like we're doing the men at my church are doing a thing on 12 years a slave, and you escaped.
Yeah. I was just in Meridian over the weekend. I was down in Jackson. It is a heavy museum. You're right about that. I also stopped by Medgar Evers' place in his neighborhood. I don't know if you had the chance of getting there yourself.
Well, like you said, I was there on business. I wanted to go to the annual conference, but I know I'm there specifically to survey the land, which look at these kind of things, and so forth. But you wanted to take in some of this, like as a trade. Hey, if you go to a place, no sense, you got to go and visit some of the sites and scenes. People say, you mean you all went to Kentucky and you go to the horse races? Yes, I went to the horse races. You went to you went to New York, wherever you go, you need to take in some of the local color and neighborhood. But Mississippi, but anyway, that's basically part of the history. And I think I'm going to there are two components. One, and this is I'm sort of taking up a lot of time. Two components. One is that there is the Pigforth lawsuit. It was actually Mike Espy from Mississippi. He's one of the attorneys on the staff. And this is where the black land laws there has been challenged because of the discriminatory policies of the Department of Agriculture. Where my family farm is in Arkansas, it's not a black area, it's actually a white area. So basically they did not, the three farm committee people did not get the land, the tools, the tractors, and so forth to help them develop and grow. And so there's a class action lawsuit that challenged some of that regarding the Department of Agriculture. I think they worked out some kind of $5 billion settlement, but they have to fund it and so forth. So that's sort of one part. The second part is what happens to people who have land and how do they share it? How do they protect it? How do they pass it down? I think South Carolina has put together a program to actually look at that. I'll send you both the information for both those groups, but they're looking at it to see that people do preserve the land and the property that they've had over the years. And so I think South Carolina is the only place that has a program similar to that.
What is the premise of the lawsuit of the? You said it was the black land ownership.
Well, I'm sort of breaking this into two sections. One is the lawsuit where black farmers, before you were, I don't know what you do, you're wearing your little suit and on media, but you were picking cotton someplace. And so, and we were sharecroppers, and some of us actually owned land. And then some of us, and it's for some reason we lost farms. My grandmother, I know, during her lost time, she sold 3 farms. We were able to maintain 2 in Arkansas. We've probably got about 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces of property in Mississippi. I don't know where else they have stuff, but I'm sure, if there's not somebody keeping an eye on it, watching it, this sort of things. But the Mississippi, the lawsuit for which we were able to get some of our family members in the class action, part of the class action, was they were challenging the Department of Agriculture's policies, which were discriminatory against black farmers. And black farmers needed seed, they need fertilizer, they needed tractors, they needed equipment and so forth. And, basically the Department of Agriculture said, we're going to assign this to 3 farmers in the area and they make these decisions. And so our farmers were not part of the mix. And so that's why they've got that lawsuit going on. That's those are the basic parameters. And they filed a class action lawsuit. I just happened to I did a class action lawsuit. And so I just happened to follow that one a little more carefully. And then we've got finally someone involved with it because, we're victimized too. A lot of people lost it. I think maybe 90% of black people have lost their land, 5 million acres or whatever the number is. They've lost their land. Some people said, if you're not out of town by 5 o'clock, I'm going to kill you. And the guy just up and left.
So on a legal side, here's a question I have, and this definitely, I don't even play attorney on TV. With these legal minds, how is that able to be proven now your land was stolen from you then? Is that even possible if you have no written record and the person that wrote down the record was more often white? So
well, I mean, I think land transfers are probably pretty. You've got some kind of documentation for it. In fact, this is true. One of my cousins complained about her aunt who complained about her house in Washington, D.C., that such and such and such and such. And so whatever it is, I went and checked it, and it's still in a trust. Okay. The attorney who did the case set up a trust, and it's still that same way now. Okay. And it just happens that one of my cousins talked about her aunt, talked about it when she was a nurse, joining or whatever it is, the Army in World War II and so forth, and whatever happened to her house. So I just happened to,
So who owns the trust in that situation?
I think it's not a family member, that's for sure.
Oh, so you think the attorney that they went to took her property and wrote a trust and made himself the beneficiary?
Whatever it is, but it's not somebody in the family that I can talk to. That's why we've got the Brookings Land Survey. We did a survey of, with the Mississippi land, doing our Alex Haley, we down and tracked all the Pierres and all the lands they had before and after the revolution.
Are those some of the people you have in the picture that you sent me? Do you want me to share the picture with you?
We had a committee. We basically had a committee. We've had about, it probably basically considered about 4 native Mississippians and about 4. I just happened to notice that some of our cousins, the cousins who weren't from Mississippi we all from the Midwest, and we all went to Big Ten universities, Wisconsin or Michigan State, and the other cousins went to Jackson State. So they're all state universities. So.
Okay. So who's in the picture? Can you see the picture that I'm sharing?
There was a couple of people when I told them the bishop was coming, they went out to get their cameras, so they're not in there. But the gentleman on the left is Dexter Brookins. He's a retired U.S. Army colonel. He was in defense artillery, which I didn't know when I came up. The guy in the center is Bishop Wicker. He's the Amy Bishop for Mississippi and Georgia. The person in the black shirt is me. The other on the far end is my brother Carl from Wisconsin. And the lady in the center is Mary Brookins. And she's the big sister of she's got about 4 or 5 brothers who all did very, very well, professor this and such and such and such. And so she was responsible for making sure that they all came up pretty well, and they did. And her brothers, her 3 brothers, all of their children only went to Ivy League schools. I don't know why. And they could have gone to Wisconsin, but...
or Howard.
Or Howard,
and they would have been better there.
But on the other hand, they did. They have gone back. I see where they've gone back. Dexter was he was a professor. He was the head of the military science department. A couple have gone back to Jackson State. The Brookins family has 2 scholarships. We have a scholarship for kids from Mississippi, and the Brookins family has a scholarship. It's probably the AME Church has a scholarship for international students. And so if you're a Brookins and you don't have a scholarship and you can't get a Brookins scholarship, you're really in a tight fix. Everybody else is getting scholarship, but I think, but it's important that you do have education and these kind of activities.
That is so true. They cannot take that away from you. I have a question because I don't think we all are. Well, okay, you know what? Let me speak for myself. I'm sorry. I'm so used to speaking in terms of we. Because it's not my client did this, it's we did this, because, you have to show that someone is in your client's corner when you're in court. And so I didn't quite understand it. I think you went over the survey part too quickly. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to conduct a survey?
Well, basically, I'm sorry. Basically, for some reason, all of our cousins, like my dad and Bishop Brookins and so forth, they're all cousins, a whole bunch of cousins. And they were deeded property, where they acquired property by somebody in the family for some reason. And so they were all jointly responsible for this piece of property. And they've, and
they acquired the property in Mississippi.
Yeah, it's in Mississippi. For some reason, we just...
Which is kind of strange.
There's a big plot of land. It's probably maybe 10, 12 parcels, and we all got a piece of it. And
how many generations back?
Well, we go back to the family reunion side. We go back to February 12th, 1817. So whether they had property or not, but we, in the process of tracking things, and we can see whether they own property or not own property as slaves and where they were and so forth. But the family reunion does it. We can go back and track the tombstones. But where we do have an opportunity, some of the property was properly transferred from, this one.
Wow. Okay, to me, I find this amazing that you were able to trace your family back to 1817. And then not only that, but at some point between 1817 and currently, but we're saying generations ago, that they actually owned property in Mississippi.
See, I find that amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you track right. They've I think thanks to Alex Haley, we all tracked our families, so we've tracked our families.
And how did you do that? I mean, was it the census? Because I know some people say that they used the census, but I've seen part of the census, and the handwriting is, looks kind of foreign sometimes. When you go back that far.
Well, I think the main thing was when Alex Haley set up this thing, our family set up a family reunion schedule. Technically, the Brookins name is not a very common name. so we can sort of track who they are. We just have a difference between the I's and the E's. And so, we were able to sort of track those. And so the family reunions, they would do that. And then one part of the family, so you used to know who's in the family. They may not know us the way, we've got a whole bunch of people in Mississippi and Arkansas, and we've got a bunch of people in Chicago. We have a Brookings Plaza in Chicago, and we only got my dad and his two brothers in Milwaukee and their wives, and his two brothers don't have any children. But you go to the family reunion and you get to find out who all these people are. I pledged to Omega Psi Phi and my two brothers the Kappas, and they said, hey, one of our relatives is the founder of the Kappa, so we can't go with any other fraternity. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, you go to the family reunion, you find that out. So we were able to track a lot of things. You find out that we do have, we got 4 bishops in our family. We got 4 foreign service officers. We've got 3 Army colonels. We've got chairman, we got political people, including the chairman of the Black Caucus. Some people like that. You sort of know who they are at some point. Sitting up in Milwaukee, they see you, they recognize you, and you find out they talk to you.
Mr. Brookins, I don't want to interrupt you, but Judge Claudia Barber said this once. She says we have to tell our own story. And I think you going to the family reunion and listening to your own story was the catalyst of all this. So it kind of answers Marylin's question, soon to be Circuit Court Judge of Montgomery County, that the only way we are going to understand what we are and what we have is if we go start to ask that question. If you don't have a family reunion, contact somebody and ask what is what and who was what, and start writing it down. Because I'm so thankful 1817, but we have to find our own story. And that, I think that's sort of true. My grandmother was a full-blooded Choctaw Chickasaw. I'm a young person. I probably didn't know it, but for some reason she visited us. She stayed with us in Milwaukee. So I asked her one day, and I said, "What kind of Indian are you?" And she sat up and she said, "I am Choctaw Chickasaw." And if you saw the picture of Colin Powell in the Portrait Museum, I said, "Wow, you have a feeling of pride." I probably, as a little boy, I played with my dad's military uniforms. I just wore his hat, and whatever it is. I sort of remember that, and went down to ask him, "What does this 5th Army stand for?" And he's World War guy. 2 guys don't say much. He said, "That's for the 5th Army. That's from Boris, from Arkansas and Louisiana, whatever it is," and so forth. So when I joined Army ROTC, I looked up the 5th Army, 92nd Division, which is our Army version of, and I wrote a paper about it. I sort of wish I had asked them to read it, but I knew to turn it in on time and get my A. Otherwise, I was going to fail. And like you said, you have to tell your own story. And fortunately for me, like going to see the church where Bishop Brookins, as a young person, as a youth, got to give sermons and walk down the road and visit.
Is the road named after him, or is it named after another Brookins? Is it named after Bishop Brookins or another Brookins?
Well, the road is named after him. So I shouldn't say this. Outside of Richard Allen, he's probably got about 8 churches named after him. There's nothing he did. Wow. I shouldn't say this. They probably call him the Hollywood Bishop. If you saw a picture of all our bishops, they're in purple robes, and he's sitting in the middle in a white suit.
Well, I'm glad you all focused on this discussion of naming streets and things of that nature, because that is a proactive thing that must be done if we are going to create such things as statues, such things as the Ronald Reagan Airport, such as things as the Thurgood Marshall Airport. So we have a say and an opportunity to reach out and make those things happen, so that you have more women statues as opposed to tawny statues and Confederate statues.
even
Susan,
mermaid statues. I think they said that there's a
Susan
place
B.
that had
Anthony.
a mermaid
Come on,
statue, but not a woman statue.
Yeah, there are not enough women statues so that we can make a difference and push that movement forward, so that we're not always taking a back seat and always looking at men's statues as they were the only person of significance in the country.
Well, I'm glad Barbara said that, because I'm sort of proud that one of my cousins, who's a U.S. District Court judge, she's the only one who jacked up the Foreign Intelligence Service Board, although, I know we need to have surveillance, but say they're not doing stuff right, the rubber stamping stuff, they're not doing kind of things, but you have to be knowledgeable, so forth, and being in the room is important. And I think we need to do that. Marylin is always talking about, this is a side, I said, I'm on the committees for AFL-CIO, and we have to make endorsements. And, I got to work with 200 unions, and I got to get 100 of them to agree to this, and we're looking at whatever it is. But down the ballot, there are other people they need to look at. And, hey, are we going to consider some of these races, and how does it affect the unions? I'm part of the union. How does it affect churches and so forth? And maybe we have to have somebody to do the analysis. And like you said, I looked at the lady in the center of our picture. Wow, she had to make sacrifices in order to make sure that her brothers, and the younger brothers all went to college. And to do kind of things. So she had to make all these kind of sacrifices. She had to do a lot of these kind of things to make sure, that they're fed and all, help out. And I think their father died when they were, very young. So she had to help out and get sort of stuff. And before that, mom never worked outside the house, but mom had to do something else. And so we have to look at what people are doing and the sacrifices and struggles they had. It's not all peaches and cream coming up in Wisconsin. You get I'm going to just digress one time, in Wisconsin, it's only, I have the exact data, so for any of you call me on, it's 6.7% black, fine. And they have, and the socialists, when I came there, I had a socialist mayor until I was in about 9th grade. And the socialists had to make a decision. Are we going to be socialists or segregation? They had a decision to wait. They decided we're going to be socialists. So if you're a valedictorian, salutatorian, for Milwaukee, Wisconsin high school, you got a full scholarship to any of the 11 universities in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. That did not happen for my mother in Arkansas and Ernie Green. They said you can go anywhere you want to except Arkansas. And I always say if he had come to us, if he had gone one state over, I wouldn't have been the first black page. I wouldn't have been the 9th black. He would have gotten all that, and he'd still be there and running office. The people, I said, our people in Milwaukee probably want a factory job. And people from Milwaukee, not Milwaukee, say, I want to be lieutenant governor.
Well, I'm glad that there was a discussion about the statue, because someplace in New York today was in the news that they are removing a Thomas Jefferson statue from public premises. And I thought that was fascinating. I was wondering when we were going to get to that point.
Well, you mentioned that when they had the Democratic National Convention in Wisconsin, I think it was a lady from Tulane, someplace in the South, Vanderbilt, and she wrote an article for the New York Times. She said, for these statutes, you look at my mocha skin color, that's their tribute, tear them all down. And I saw the email, it had the 200 black students from the University of Wisconsin, the Oshkosh 91, I recognized their names. I saw the kids from other places, and I saw the real deal. And so, exercising my leadership, I sent out an email. Don't tear them down. We're going to talk about it at the Democratic National Convention, Faith Committee. So show up. That's where we're going to talk about it, and we're going to decide what we're going to do with the statutes in Wisconsin, because they sent out a list of where they were. And so they got some, so eventually, they tore down a couple, and I'm trying to see if they were AMEs or Methodists, because they voted me for something they usually say, but no, I disagree with you. The people who sent out stuff were probably, I'd say, Congregationalists, and so they're not going to be able to organize as fast, but they tore down some of them anyway. But that's important. But it's sort of, we don't have statues, but we do have tombstones. They've got what do we do with the tombstone to, some people in Wisconsin? Well, okay, if it's a tombstone, I'll probably let it stay for the statute. I don't know.
I just found out when I flew into Jackson, Medgar Evers' airport, that they were going to change that airport's name and take Medgar Evers' name off of that and call it Jackson Confederate Airport.
Wow. Terrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it did. That bill did not get passed, and it was recent.
Wow. Well, that's an eye opener for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I looked at Mississippi is probably 38% black, and they have one congressional district. This is not really relevant to the environment for our property, but they have one congressional, one black congressperson. Wisconsin has one black congressperson too, but
it's 6% black.
Well, yeah. I'm going to just go. At some point, I was interested in what Wisconsin politics. I'm sort of homeschooled. I just sort of looked at the data and so forth. But at some point, I figured out that two things. Black folks were sort of congregated in a sort of a couple of areas in Wisconsin. There was no de facto segregation, but when my dad was a veteran, he built a house in Arkansas when I was born, which I probably don't remember, but he bought a house in a white neighborhood when my brother, Stanton Lipp, was born. I remember that. And there were only maybe 3 or 4 black people lived in the neighborhood. And there was one, and our parsonage was there, 10 blocks. In any direction, I know who the black people are because they went to the same school or different school and so forth. But, this is the kind of environment. But when we put together a strategy that says, okay, we can elect somebody black from our district. All we got to do, they did not have party identifications in Wisconsin. All we got to do is to get somebody who's progressive. If I come and talk in law and order and stuff like that, that's not going to work. But if I talk something that's relevant for people, then we win we win that, and that was a strategy. It worked. Of course, I was the chosen candidate, and I said, we're going to take it to the party. I said, but no, we're going to take it to a community forum like the one we're having right now. And I said, I'll abide by the decision, and it just happens that the guy who actually was running, he actually had people in one of the jobs programs show up and so forth, and he won it, but he eventually got indicted for doing that. Otherwise, I would probably been still sitting in Milwaukee.
With the little time we have left, I have a question, Mr. Bonet, I'm going to ask you. The way the climate of politics is going, party this, party that, we are heading, I think we've been through this crossroads and this fork in the road. Where do you think we could attack now to benefit a better place to go? If you understand my question.
Well, I'm looking at, right now we have, although, I think right now we have, we have the Republicans are saying the liberals and the moderates and the Democratic Party need to fight it out, and you guys need to set these sort of things in there. And I probably identify with the wing, but the margin is very thin. Mm-hmm. We're all Democrats, even when we had Dixiecrats in the organization. But what kind of programs are we going to try to do? There's a difference between a $3 trillion program and a $1 trillion program. It's a difference between having gerrymandering supported in Georgia and Mississippi and Arkansas and so forth, and even in Wisconsin, how they're going to try to do these things, and every vote counts. And I've worked in campaigns and in New York and in all kinds of other places. But every vote counts, and the wind can blow either way. I've still been trying to figure out Marylin.
Yeah, me too. Because what it says and what it does are two different things. There is something I want to ask you about, though, before we're done. Comfort and I earlier today were having this discussion about how there seems to be a lack of knowledge in our community about how to pass on wealth from one generation to another. Your family seems to have done it very, very well. Could you tell us about that?
Well, I don't think we've done it. I don't think we've done that very well. That's probably why we're sort of doing that, because it's.
Well, you know what you owned, so that's.
Well,
that's more than some people.
You need to really do it. You really need to have a very systematic system, a plan for doing some of these things. And I don't think we're there. We need. You need people who are experienced and knowledgeable. It's a farming area. I only know 3. I just found a third person who has an agriculture degree in agriculture. Mm-hmm. Although maybe half my work life, I do manufacturing and agriculture from Wisconsin. But you have to know something about the system. But you have to be able to put things in place. And what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with farmland? You give me a factory, I might know something about it. Or some other cyberspace, one of my kids might know about it, yours too. But how are they going to do some of these things? And this is my little plug. And they took the show off the air, whatever it was called, where they had the black pianos, and so because of the companies are talking about Juicy Smallwood, whatever it is, but they were talking about the black family trying to pass on the music business. And the kind of things that they have to talk about. Empire, right? And
they thank you. Because I'm like, what show was that?
Empire, that's when you diverse from your notes. I sort of need to stay with what I started to, but how do we do that? And I think this is the situation they're having in South Carolina. South Carolina is looking at how we do that, how they provide legal services and assistance for people to do these kind of things. I think Mike Espy worked for legal services for Mississippi, and he did some other kind of things. He looked at these kind of activities with farmers and so forth. I mean, it's urban dwellers. But how do you pass that on? And what kind of and lawyers are expensive. They're
not expensive. Not all lawyers.
Well, it's they're either specialized, they're either highly specialized or they're very expensive. And
well, and I also sometimes I say it's more expensive not to have a lawyer. So there's that as well.
There are also alternatives. One, you have now I can't weigh heavily in on pro bono, because pro bono has limitations to it, many limitations to it. But there are pro bono resources. There are many legal entities out there, such as Washington Council for Lawyers, or I think I'm saying the name correct, that focus on civil rights cases. There are also entities out there that focus on whistleblower cases, but they don't take every case. And so then you have legal aid services, but you also have prepaid legal services through some companies. And through, in fact, I actually just recently learned about Legal Shield, that is a good program for people who have limited resources. And it's very, very important because, yes, there are lawyers out there, especially in the DC area, they can charge, $3.50 an hour is a very low rate. They are $650 an hour up to $1,000 an hour for legal services. And that's reality.
William Bennett is said to have, one of the Bennett brothers was said to have charged $10,000 an hour. Not because of what he knows, but because of his Rolodex.
See?
But anyway, in all deference to lawyers, we're the only group that I know of that has so many free ways of using our services. If you need an electrician, like I needed one, there's no free electrician. You can't go to the electrical association and say, hey, can I have a list of your pro bono lawyers?
So there's no electrician, there's no aid electrician.
Exactly. I think Comfort wants to say something.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be part of this conversation today. Little did I know that this is going to be the topic of today. I was just having a conversation with the judge to be, although she said, oh, I know, with me coming on board, my name is Comfort. To campaign for you, you're going to be there.
Thank you so much, Comfort. I really appreciate all
the purpose-driven life. So, I haven't gone through trauma and I haven't gone through this pandemic. Over 700,000 lives were lost. And for our conversation with the judge-to-be, that even, some of the celebrity that I never thought, two things are certain in life, death and taxes. If you had told me that, a celebrity like a Prince will die intestate, no will, and
Aretha Franklin too.
Yeah. And, it's hard for me.
I had no excuse. Prince, I could understand. He's not married. He doesn't have any children. But Aretha, who has a child with a disability and
that's
ill for a really long time. Yeah.
Exactly my point. That's where I'm getting at. You will know, and she's been sick for a while. So, prepare for the inevitable. But, hey, things happen. Even when my son was murdered by Montgomery County police officer in 2011, although, that was unexpected because all my children have a college degree from reputable schools, masters from John Hopkins, from University of Maryland, and from Bowie State. I never thought that could happen to me. I can understand. So, I'm asking the special guests, where do we go from here? Because, it's a purpose-driven life. I started Comfort Financial Outreach to reach out to the underserved minorities, people who are, who thought, oh, that could never happen to me. Oh, like myself, that could never happen to me. Police can only kill you if you did something wrong. And then, we find out that you can be killed just for being black. That's the problem. We are like running from a frying pan to fire. The same divide and rule that we left back home in Africa, in Nigeria, there is even worse here. So, how can the panel help us to educate the underserved minority, to how to advance on their retirement and, savings, housing, and legacies. So, although, don't get me wrong, the white people already gained the upper hand. 400 years of free, labor, not even cheap, free. But, whatever we can do, to bring out, the minority, women, blacks, Latinos, and all these other minority groups, to elevate us, it's going to be a while before we can match up to, to the standard. If we get 400 years of free, not even cheap, free, that they built this country, our ancestors stolen from Africa and brought to America and all that, they already gained the upper hand. But now, people dying intestate, no will, and then, they don't know how to plan for the future.
So, Comfort, what's your question? You had a couple of them.
Yes, that how the special guest, Mr. Brookins, how can you help us to, we want to start financial literacy, to educate our people on how to, advance on savings and housing and everything. So, that is my question.
Well, thank you. So it's a good question, and you said a whole mouthful. about different kinds of things. But I do, before I'm sort of saying, hey, I got to cut off at 7. I can't keep them. But I think one of the things is that, we're forced to say, okay, we do have to do personal planning. I went back and I looked at, do you have a will? I pulled out my will and I shouldn't say it. I said, I included one of my nephews along with one of my 2 sons. Okay. Of course, I ain't got nothing, but when I get it, they're going to be wealthy. But but you at least got to plan on that. One of my ancestors says, hey, I'm going to deed all this property to these cousins, you see. And so there's 10 or 12 of them. And so that's how we wound the property. And so we look at these things, but it does require, we have some sort of planning. And I'm sort of tongue in cheek, like I'm sorry they took Empire off the show because it made Black people look at that. How do we transfer businesses? I'll give a shout out to one of the guy across the street from me in Milwaukee, Ashley. He did barbecue, and they said, you should go into business. And he said, man, I got a good job. I'm a welder. I'm a United All. He eventually set up a barbecue place. He had 21 Ashley barbecue places.
Wow.
So he actually set these things up. Somebody in Milwaukee decided to grow tomatoes in flower houses, and he got the contract for the food contract of the Milwaukee Public Schools. So I'm looking at these I'm looking at somebody who's not native of Milwaukee came and figured out how to make money doing agriculture. Okay. But I think, how do you plan these? And I look around, I go down, I see people who are actually farmers. They're doing these other kind of things. But how do you transfer the land? What are you going to do? What are you going to grow on it? I got one of my friends here. She owns at least 2 farms. She inherited 2 farms. I think, like you said, we need to do some of these generational planning.
Yes.
We do need to be.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say one thing is that although I talk about foreign international areas, it's an issue. For example, I'm going to say South Africa. You got tribal councils. Do we actually own the land? They're going to give you land if you're an African American, you want to go to Ghana, they're going to give you 21 acres, no mule. But and some of us are going to take advantage of that. But I think, what do we do in economic concerns, and how do we take that? If you go up at George Washington University, all that land at Georgia was owned by a Black guy. Mm-hmm. He had a carriage house. A lot of places we owned all that at some point. Some of it we were able to pass down to family members, and sometimes people said, my relatives in Michigan says, I don't want to be in the family business. I want to be a politician. Or in Chicago, I want to be anyway. But I think that's important for us to start that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bonet Brookins. Thank you. I know you have to cut off here at 7. We're going to be cutting off the show. You be the judge here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. But before we go, I want to let you know that the Caucus of African American Leaders of Maryland have put together a PAC where we are supporting all of our candidates that we support. It doesn't have to be a Black candidate, but a candidate that focuses on policy that is for African Americans in Maryland. So if you want to donate, I'm been charged to ask. You can contact me, and this is for all the listeners out there on the podcast and YouTube Nation. You can contact me via my email. That's drpaulwdyer@gmail.com. If you want to donate and to support the Caucus of African American Leaders and its PAC to help its candidates run for office, because believe it or not, it takes more than just belief. It actually takes a finance. So thank everyone. Marylin, Judge Claudia, Barber, you want to say anything before we take off?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I really am glad you mentioned that. Policy matters.
Yeah, policy matters. Yeah, policy matters. It's not the people, and it's not their color. It is policy. We have to focus on policy. We get so lost on color and separation, and we forget all about policy.
That is so true. Yeah, and because Bernadette did such a great job of sending me a wonderful link in reference to what we talked about last week with the Rutherford County judge. I think we should talk about it some more next week.
Absolutely.
And also, we could update people on Elijah McClain and what's been happening in his case and some of the other cases that are current. So
I do want to say congratulations to us, because I got 10 emails about and inboxes about that woman we talked about, Louisiana, and how crazy she is. And being a judge, and people never knew until they heard the show. So
Tennessee,
yeah, Tennessee. So thank you for us for bringing people to that information. It was amazing.
Yeah, and
the next thing we have to do. I'm sorry, but the next thing we have to do is to continue to blow this up in social media, so we expose this. It's an issue that needs to be pushed and exposed and exposed until she's out of office.
Yeah.
Yes, that's because she is running for re-election.
Re-election
next year, so 8-year term.
Now, this is how important. Now see, the problem in that situation is that nobody's running against her, and so that's why you all need to galvanize yourselves and make sure you step up to the plate when you see a situation like that and run for office. Mm-hmm. If you're a lawyer, you ought to be out there filing your certificate of candidacy to undo this. Just like Marylin Pierre going against the system.
Well, I very early in life, I had encouraged my dad to run for state representative. He had a good campaign. He had a good background. He just had a terrible campaign manager. But he eventually turned around, with experience. He sort of figured out the system. And it takes a lot to do that.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to You Be the Judge. We'll be here next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Thank you.